Welcome back to the Unbiased Opinion, where everyone's opinion is biased except ours. I'm Craig, and the other two guys aren't here today. It's another solo adventure. So, we don't get to talk a lot about video games, mainly because those two don't care about video games as much as I do. They don't really have the time for it. Not that I have much time either, but I'm definitely more into video games than they are. They're more into movies and TV shows. I'm not. If you haven't been able to tell in our reviews, I'm not really the biggest person to watch a lot of stuff in my free time. I spend more of my time playing video games. They're more fun, more engaging, definitely better for mindless entertainment than whatever TV could do for you. So we'll start off with, I want to talk about the Metroid series where I would rank the games. I like the series a lot. I like the games where you can explore and kind of take things at your own pace. I know it's a lot of people play these games to speedrun. I don't speedrun games. It's a waste of time, ironically. It's not very fun. I hate tedious things. So we'll start off with the ranking system. S, very, very, very good. 10 out of 10, 9 out of 10. A, still good, very good, just not as good as S tier. B, mid. Good, not great, okay. C has more problems than good. There's still some redeeming qualities, while D is just kind of really bad. So, first game in the list, Metroid 1 for the NES Famicom. Came out over almost 35 years ago now. Almost, yeah, it's really old. So, as you will clearly see that because it's very old, it's not a very good game. I know people like to give old games a pass because, well, they're old, and I do agree to an extent that they shouldn't be judged too harshly because they are a product of their time. But at the same time, playing it now, it's not very fun. Because people seem to confuse difficulty with tediousness, and this game is just very tedious. I don't find it difficult in the sense where I'm being challenged. I can't beat it because I'm not good enough. You take a lot of damage from the enemies. There's no map, which bothers me a lot. I like knowing where I am in video games. If there's no map, I usually don't even want to play it, to be honest. Or, in a traditional sense like this game, if there's no map. Obviously other games don't need maps, but no maps in this game I find very difficult, especially in a world you have to explore. I know back then people made their own maps. I'm not making my own map. There's maps online, but I feel like they kind of also defeats the purpose of it too because they show you everything. All around, it's not a very fun game. There's no way to save. A lot of repetition. Rooms are all the same color. Very boring. Like I said, I know it's a product of its time. I know it's got its issues, but doesn't make it a good game. And I don't think that really redeems it from being at the bottom of the list for now. So next on the list is Metroid 2. Return of whatever. Metroid 2 for the Game Boy. This is obviously a much better game than Metroid 1. It has its own save system now, which is greatly appreciated. The first one didn't have a save system. It was that password system, which, is what it is. Well, the Famicom had a save system, but this is the first one that universally have a save system. Also, very different in structure. The first Metroid game, you could kind of just go anywhere in the world, sort of. It was very open. Metroid 2, it's a lot more linear. You go through areas 1 through, I think, 8 to kill all the Metroids. Which I find kind of funny. Just the plot is just commit genocide of a certain species because they're a bit annoying. But yeah, you gotta go through, kill the Metroids. Very repetitive. All the different, the Metroids, they get stronger as you go deeper. Not really much different. I mean, I know they look different. There's some different attacks, but really just the same. Just spam missiles at them and you'll kill them. Still along the line of, tedious and boring. There were obviously major improvements too, like now that you have the various suit. Before it was just the power suit. There's that visual difference. I know they had the Queen Metroid, or the Baby Metroid, which became a huge thing at the for all the future games, but that was also big at the time. But all in all, still kind of in the same category. No map really hurts a lot for me. I hate not knowing where I am. I know it's a bit easier this time because you're going through areas and the areas are smaller, but not having a map still bothers me. Like I said, it's a very old game. No real reason to play with all the remakes of it out now. So now with Super Metroid, definitely the first big, well, actually was big. It was one of the biggest games to come out at the time, but big as in more well well respected, well loved now. These two games, they're more products of their time, historical games for the franchise, but Super Metroid, that's the first one where it's like, wow, this is actually a really good game, and this is actually a really good series, as opposed to just being this weird alien knockoff exploration kind of game. I know there's a lot of praises. People praise this game quite often, call it one of the greatest games ever, and I don't know if I'd put it quite there, but I do find it very, very, very good. Has a map, which is one of the more important things. I think the map's a bit dated, but I'll take what I can get. Still, they have a map, which I greatly appreciate. Not as good as the maps of the more recent games, but still very good. Movements. Well, the movement's not as great as older games. You're very floaty, which not as fun to play as, in my opinion, but still very good. Great progression, great exploration, great boss fights. All in all, just a classic for the SNES. I know a big thing about this game is that people love the speedrunning for it. Again, I don't speedrun games. I don't care about all the ways you can break it. The one thing I will say, though, is that people seem to think that a lot of those sequence breaking and stuff is intentional. I can guarantee you that it's not. People who made this game, I can guarantee were like, yeah, we had no idea you could do that. Because they might say it now, but I don't believe them. I don't believe for a second that they had all this stuff planned. So next game on the list, changing order a bit, is Metroid Fusion. This game I don't like as much. I know I don't really have a problem with the Metroid games being a bit linear more than others. What I don't like is how it kind of basically railroads you to one. I know that's game design, they want to force you into one direction, but this game really does that by locking doors behind you, making sure you can't ever backtrack or go the wrong way, which is what I find more offensive in my opinion. I don't like being told exactly what to do. I kind of like being able to go at my own pace. If I want to backtrack and just waste my time, I should be able to. This game really doesn't let you do that. But it's still a good game. I think the movement's much better. Because again, Super Metroid, you're much more floaty, which worked for the game. It's not really a flaw in my opinion. It's just I prefer the more Metroid Fusion onward kind of movement where you fell really fast and you were much more faster. So again, the movement was better. Power-ups were all kind of the same. Not the same, but they were all really good. Boss fights were good. It's still a good game. I don't really like the railroading. I know a lot of people like the SAX. I really didn't care for it. I don't know. It's just some alien imposter like the Thing or whatever. Didn't really do much for me. Like, it stole your power suit and whatever. The other thing too with this game is that it introduced Adam Malkovich, which I played this game after Other M, so I didn't really have a great impression of this guy, and a lot of the stuff I don't. It's not the game's fault necessarily for people's negative perception of Adam Malkovich. It just doesn't help the game, in my opinion, either. I know it's not the game's fault. I don't obviously like the character. Spoilers, but I said just going back and replaying the game and hearing her talk so much about this guy, it's like, really, this guy who is a bumbling idiot? Is it the guy you revere so much that's dead? Like I said, I know it's not the game's fault. I don't. It makes it hard to go back and I know there's a lot of those scenes where you read tons of. That's the other thing too. There's tons of dialogue dumps where you're just reading text after text. I don't really like having to read in video games. I like just to play the game. So I would probably put this in, I guess, B tier. I don't know. It's good, but there are other things I don't like about it either. I don't like the railroading. I don't really care for the SEX stuff. Yeah. Next on the game is Zero Mission. It's a remake of the first Metroid game. And to me, it's always been the core standard of what a remake should be. A lot of games get remade now, or remastered, whatever term you want to use, and it's usually just a waste of time. A lot of you're remaking a game that came out 5 years ago, and it's like, why? There's something to remake. You can't really improve it. This is remaking a game that came out almost 20 years. The difference 2004 to 86, almost 20 years ago. Huge changes in technology. Makes sense to do a remake of that game, and I think it does it very well. Again, it takes the Metroid Fusion movement, Takes a lot of stuff in the first Metroid game and Super Metroid. Like now, in the first game, Kraid was about the size of you. Now Kraid's, the size of multiple screens. So it takes a lot from previous games to kind of fit better into the lore, quote unquote. But I just think it's all around a fun game. Like I said, the boss fights were good. I don't really care as much for the Zero Suit section. Like whenever I replay the game, I just depends if I'm in the mood to play or not. I know that's not really all that long. I don't really care for the stealth section. And it's just me. After you've played a few times, it's like, yeah, it's whatever. It's not really, I think, that great of an addition. I know if you don't replay that, you miss out on the extra Ridley boss fight and extra stuff, but I don't really care for the stealth section. It is what it is. But all in all, I would put this game in the A tier. I know it's very short too, but I don't really think that's much of an issue. It's a really good game, especially now you can get it for dirt cheap or don't pay for it at all, but I still find it a very fun game to come back to and replay. So, going back a bit, Metroid Prime, the first 3D Metroid game, and one of the first Metroid games I played. The first one I played was Super Metroid, and I loved it and got me into the rest of the series, but Metroid Prime was the first one that I really, really enjoyed. It's actually, spoiler, it's going to put it S tier. It's going to be number one. It's my favorite one so far. If it would snap. There we go. It's all my favorite. I know people might say, it's very similar to Super Metroid in the power-ups and kind of the world you explore. And on a very surface level it is, but I still find it very fun. I love the exploration, I love the combat, I love the powers. All in all, I love the game, I love the lore, I like the way the world looks, I like the combat, I like the scan visor. Which goes into my point of I like to kind of play games at my own pace. You can kind of just go through the world slowly, use your scan visor, learn a bunch of things about the world, seeing how these, the space pirates are keeping Metroids as pets and they're getting themselves killed. That's definitely one of the more better things added to the series, in my opinion, was the scan visor. Because it allows you to read, little details about the world. That's another thing about the logbook, reading about all the animals, the lore. It's nothing really great gameplay-wise, but it just, again, allows me to take in the world at the speed that I want to, and allows me to play the game more of how I want to. Also just being a fun game and getting to explore. Because I know people don't like some of the backtracking or I forget what the key hunt is at the end, but the temple artifacts. Yeah, I don't really mind. Actually, that's something I find to be an overrated complaint. Because when I played the game, I got almost all of them or most of them before I had to fight Ridley at the end. I think I was missing one, so I just went and got back all of them anyway, just for the sake of it. Because if you play the game and properly explore, you'll probably get most of the keys by the time you have to fight Ridley and then go to the crater. That's the other thing too. Like it definitely had probably one of the better Ridley boss fights, and I loved the Metroid Prime boss fight, going slower and deeper and deeper into the impact crater until you finally wear it down and you kill it. Because I know the Ridley boss fight, especially Super Metroid, it's not really that great of a boss fight. You're just kind of spamming Ridley with missiles until you can finally kill him or he kills you. Because it's hard to avoid those attacks, but in this game, definitely felt more like a better boss fight. Granted, also it's in 3D and all that stuff, but you can still do 2D boss fights just as well. But all in all, I love Metroid Prime. Definitely one of, if I were to put like an all-time top 10 list, would definitely be on that list. I love this game a lot. Definitely one of the better, or at least in my opinion, the best Metroid game out there so far. So this is actually one game I have not played on this list, or actually there's two, but I don't consider this one really a Metroid game. It's just a pinball game. It is what it is. I'm just playing it here because I never played it, but it's a pinball game. I don't really feel the need to justify to talk about it all that much. So next on the list is Metroid Prime 2, and I really, really, really do not like this game. It goes against basically everything I like in a video game. I hate the Dark World. It's not for, again, like I talked about before, how people confuse difficulty with tedious. It is a very tedious game. I hate going into the Dark World. and having my health drain very quickly, then having to slowly regain it in those little pockets of light. I hate it. It makes the game incredibly slow, incredibly tedious. It's not very fun to sit there, and especially there's sections where you have to basically run to the next healing point. You have to sit there and wait to get your health to heal, and you have to constantly switch back and forth between the dark and light world, and just constant loading, and it feels like a very tedious game. And I feel like with a lot of GameCube games around this time, they were rushed, which if you ever read the development history of some of these games, like I think of the trio of Metroid Prime 2, Wind Waker, and Mario Sunshine. All three of those games had rushed developments. There's tons of cut content and repeated stuff. And it's often people are very like people my age, on YouTube are very nostalgic for these games. Quite the opposite. I did not like these games growing up, and I still don't like them to this day. Because I don't know, maybe I just had a better eye, but you could tell that these games were rushed. Like I think for this game specifically, they said they had 40% done. I forgot the quote from Kensuke Tanabe, the producer, but he said basically most of the game was not done until like the final 4 or so months of the development time, and they just kind of rushed to get everything out. It was not properly done, and I feel like you can tell when people say it's the best one because it's the most difficult. I don't really think it's that difficult of a game. I just think it's incredibly tedious and very annoying. Like I don't know. I really did not like it. I mean, the boss fights were fine. Some were good, some were bad. But I really hated the Dark World. I hate the concept of constantly losing health and slowly regaining it. Like I don't know why that was allowed. It just drags the game down to a crawl. It's also probably my least played mainline Metroid game. I can't come back to this game. It's so boring and so tedious. And I also didn't really care for the ammo system. Like I don't really. I know there's ammo for your missiles, supposed to be your stronger attacks. Now you're having ammo for your beam attacks. It's not the end of the world, but I also didn't really care for the choice, and clearly it didn't go over well because they never implemented it again. Like I prefer more of the Metroid Prime one where you switch between beams to kind of better have an advantageous which beam you want to use. Oh, this enemy speaks to this beam. I know it's not the most difficult thing in the world, but at least there's some thought put into this. There is thought put into it, but you're gonna have to manage more resources, which I don't really care for as much. But where I'd put this, I really don't like it. I don't know why this is always rated so highly. People again talk about the difficulty of the bosses, talk about the fact that you die a lot. I mean, yeah, you die a lot, but that's not good in a sense. I mean, am I being challenged because I have to sit there and wait for minutes because my health needs to re-heal after draining it? No, it's wasting my time. I don't know, people seem to confuse that a lot, it bugs me a lot. So, next game on the Metroid Prime side of things is Metroid Prime Hunters. I remember I had the demo. I forget how I know obviously I got it with the DS, but I think I got it with some pack or whatever. I remember playing the demo a lot, didn't really do much with it. Then I finally got the Hunters a few years ago, and I remember people always praised it because it had the first appearance of Psylux, which, at this point in the series, he's just a nobody. Who cares? People talk about the multiplayer too, and never played the multiplayer. But that's all people ever talked about this game, because you actually played the campaign or story or whatever. It's not very good. It's incredibly tedious, incredibly boring. Like, you're just running through these worlds, collecting stuff, and doing the same boss fights over. Like, that giant tower with the eyes you have to constantly beat. It's very boring and very tedious. Thank God it's a short game, because I'm not sure how much more I could have sat through with it. Like I said, I know it's it's a very simple DS game. I know it's impressive to get that kind of game on a DS, but at the same time, it's not very fun. It's not very good either. Like it's not the worst thing in the world, but there's really no reason to replay it all that much. Especially when people say the best thing about it was the multiplayer, which you can't play anymore. No real reason to really play this game. Next on the list is Metroid Prime 3 Corruption. This one I find gets a lot more hate than it deserves. I think it's a really good game. I know people talk about the linearity of it, and I know there's more actiony scenes, which didn't bother me as much. Wasn't all that cringy in my opinion as people like to make it out to be. And the linearity too, the game basically tells you where to go, but there's still some exploration, still some unique. That's the thing with Metroid Prime 2 I didn't like. Let's go jumping back to that. A lot of it looked the same. I know you could say that's part of the story, like Dark World basically all looked the same except for the Sanctuary Fortress. It was the Agon Waste and Torvus Bog, basically identical, gray, dark green, gross colors. The visual variety wasn't there like other games, which you could say, oh, it's more realistic, but it's very difficult to look at and it's not very pleasing to the eye. And I get, it's part of the story and all that, but it's also a video game. You kind of have to. It's a balancing act. With Metroid Prime 3 Corruption, definitely had probably the most set of unique worlds in my opinion. You had Skytown. The first one, I forget the name of that planet, but that was probably the most boring one. I forget the name of the planet. Brio, I think it was. Yeah, but you had Skytown, you had the space-powered home, which I thought was very cool, and then obviously you had Planet Phase. All three very unique planets, very fun to explore. I like the boss fights in the game. I didn't really care for the fact that you're fighting your former bounty hunter friends. It's like, you don't know who these people are. Who cares? Like, you're supposed to be. I know, like, Sam's supposed to be sad in the game, but I'm not. I don't know who these people are. Like, the ice guy saves you in the beginning when you're falling in that shaft fighting Ridley, which is a cool boss fight. But, I don't really care who these people are. And I know this is like the final appearance of Dark Samus. I know she appeared in the second one, but it really wasn't the main character. She was just kind of there. This one, all about Dark Samus and the face on. Fun stuff. I know people said it was easy to because of the. I forget the name of that mode where you vent your phase on, like you're just shooting and killing and destroying things. Didn't bother. I never really used it, so I know that's. You could say you should use it. That's makes the game easier, but the game was kind of on the easier side, so you never really had to use it to begin with. I don't know. Like these games being easy don't bother me as much because part of the fun is exploring. So if it's on the easier side, it doesn't bother me as much as long as it's not tedious. That's what I can't stand. But all in all, a fun game. I know there's a lot more dialogue, a lot more talking, a lot more characters, which kind of goes against the isolation theme, but I still find it to be a very fun game. Putting in the A tier. So next on the list is the infamous Metroid Other M. And I'm not going to be contrarian, it is not a good game. I mean, even if you were to take out the bad story, which, like I mentioned before, has Adam Malkovich, who is a bumbling idiot. I don't know how anyone respects this man. Getting his brother killed because he's an idiot. Telling Samus to disable her power suit, which, that's something that bothered me too. There's always these people try to explain how she keeps losing her power-ups from game to game, and it's just a video game, man. Like, you don't have to give an explanation. Like, just accept the fact that it's a video game, she gets her powers, and the next game she restarts. Like, I don't know. People seem to be obsessed with trying to find reasons. Like, in Metroid Prime, she loses part of her power-ups, but in Metroid Dread, we'll see that she loses her power-ups. This game, she has them, but they're disabled. I think Metroid Prime 2, they get disabled. Metroid Prime 3, Metroid Fusion. There's always some explanation why she can't have her powers, but I just find it very odd. It's a video game. You don't have to have an explanation, just accept it. No one's going to, find a flaw in your game because you're not explaining properly why she doesn't have all of her powers in the previous game. It's just a video game, man. Yeah, but that was just a dumb reason. Like, it just willingly disables some of her powers. And a lot of stuff too, like the obsession with the baby Metroid, her PTSD, it's not done well. Especially, at this point in the story, she's fought Ridley how many times? Fine before, but now she has a problem with Ridley. Feels very contrived. The baby. I don't know. And then trying to create a mother brain clone to control the it's all contrived, very stupid. Which, again, wouldn't bother me as much if the game was very fun to play, and that's often the cope people have with this game. Even then, it's not fun to play. It's very flashy, yes, but it's also very tedious, or not tedious, very monotonous and easy. If you just spam the dodge move, you can never get hit and just constantly shoot. It's not a very difficult game. It's very flashy, you got very scenes of Samus running, her spaceship, she goes flying, very flashy, all the takedown moves, but it's not really fun, so that doesn't help it either. Trying to use the missiles, you go into first person, and then you can't move. I don't know. Then and Sakamoto's obsession with not including the nunchuck, so you're very limited on the buttons. Like, oh, it's like the NES. Well, it's not 1986 anymore. You can have more buttons than, the A, B, and the D-pad. Yeah, not a very good game, and unfortunately, this game was so bad that it put the series in the hiatus for a few years. So it's gonna go. I don't know. It's technically, I would say, better than these games, but I don't know. Barely. Oh, maybe I'll put it here. I really like the first Metroid game. So now on to Federation Force, a spin-off, which, just to defend the game for a sec, I've actually never played this game, but I remember when the game was announced, because this was supposed to come around the time of, I don't know if it was around or on the time of the 30th anniversary of the first Metroid game, and people were very butthurt about it. So much so to the point where they were making protests and calling next level games to stop development. And it was just like absurdly childish and stupid. Like, why are you going to tell them to stop making the game? Why would they stop it? Like, people were just getting outraged for no reason. Like, it's the internet, people do that, but it was just very, very silly. Like, I'm not even saying you had to buy the game or support it. I bought the game very recently. I didn't support the game at all. I was like, this looks not that interesting, but people going out of your way to harass the developers and trying to get a petition to shut down the game development, like, it's so stupid. Just don't buy the game. Like, no one's saying because there's a Metroid label or Nintendo label you have to buy the game. Just don't buy it. Very simple. I mean, I did agree with it didn't look good. I only bought the game recently to kind of complete the collection because I have every other game but that one. But yeah, I never played it. It didn't look all interesting. I didn't really care for the multiplayer aspect, especially since I knew I could never get anyone else to play it with me. Because even if I did, it didn't really look all that interesting. The only thing about this game is that this shows Silex at the end of it stealing, I think, a Metroid egg, which is supposed to carry over to Metroid Prime 4, but as of right now, who cares, because none of that's relevant. So here, I'm just going to put it, I probably should make another tier, just because these are the tiers of me not playing a game. So next on the list is AM2R. I know this is technically a fan game, not an official, but I do include it in my rankings, and it's a game I do replay from time to time. I do like this game a lot. I think it's very good. So I know there's two remakes of Metroid 2. I call this one the quote-unquote HD remake, mainly because this feels a lot closer to the intention of the Metroid 2. Not that makes it better or worse, but it definitely feels more, like I said, like a reskin, kind of more closer to. I know Zero Mission does take liberties too, but it definitely feels like they were trying to actively recreate the game. And I do feel like they did a good job with that. I liked a lot of the improvements that they made. This plays a lot like Metroid Fusion and Metroid Zero Mission. Much better movement. But some of the downsides to this game are the fact that it's a remake of Metroid 2. A lot of the boss fights, the fighting the Metroids over and over again, not very fun. But they do kind of help pad that out with more interesting boss fights, or not interesting, but more boss fights pulled from like Fusion and some new ones too, like the Tester, and what was that, the Flying Chozo statue. So that definitely helps make the game a little more interesting. The environments are great. I know it's linear, like I mentioned before, Metroid 2 is a bit more of a linear game, but it doesn't really bother me because you're given like not this huge world to explore, smaller chunks to kind of maneuver and explore. So I don't really feel that it's a bad thing. It's linear, quote unquote, but not really. I liked a lot of that the log feature, which I loved. I like it. I loved it being able to kind of read, and I know it does it automatically because you can't scan, but still, it's a nice addition to the game. I like going through the logs to kind of see their explanation for stuff, seeing because in the original Metroid 2 you had all these areas, but they all look the same, all bland environments. There's the lore behind all what the environments were doing, how they fit into this world. Very fun to read. Oh, well, just a very good game. I definitely one of my favorite Metroid games. I do like it more than Super Metroid, mainly because I like the gameplay a lot more. I know Super Metroid's not only official, but I like the map feature, I like the movement, I like the boss fights. I know it's not the best, but all in all, it just feels better to play. Going back to Super Metroid, I don't really like the floatiness of the game, which is what, it's not the end of the world, but just when it comes to picking a game to play or replay, I'm going to pick the one that feels better to play. And I know it's been, just to, I know it's been shut down by Nintendo and people were upset about that, but at this point, especially now, like maybe at that time it was a little different, but especially now people keep making fan games and they keep getting shut down by Nintendo. At this point, I don't really have any sympathy for people anymore. You know, maybe back in the day when this was all new, you know, people are, what are they going to do? Are they not going to do it? I could understand some sympathy, but now, you know, Nintendo's going to shut it down. People keep making fan games like, how can Nintendo shut it down? It's like, you're just asking for trouble. You know they're going to do it. They have a history of doing it. I don't really feel bad for people anymore. Call it the bootlicker response, but I just, you know how they are. This isn't even defending them or saying what they're doing is right. It's just, you know how they're going to react to a fan game. At this point, you're asking for trouble. And the other Metroid 2 remake, Samus Returns, I also like a lot. I think both games are both very good. People try to act like there's this big war between the two games. I don't really see it that way. I mean, one's developed by Nintendo, one's not. All in all, I do think it's a very good game. I do like it a lot as well. I do have it also in the S tier, slightly below AM2R. I remember the controversy, not really a controversy, but when this game came out, people were really, really, really upset for some reason that this game was not on the Switch. And I remember, like, just being amazed at the stupidity of people, like not understanding game development, saying, oh man, this game would have done so much better if it was on the Switch. I mean, Metroid games don't sell well in general, but, you know, they started development probably before they knew about the Switch. Actually, I'm pretty sure that's what they said word for. They didn't know about the Switch. They're developing for the Game Boy, or the 3DS has a huge install base. I don't know, because, you know, I watch reviews on YouTube and people are saying, oh man, if only it was on the Switch, like it's a con. And the game came out a few months after the Switch launched. It wasn't like it came out, you know, now on the 3DS where they had plenty of time to develop it for the Switch. No, they developed it for the 3D. I don't know. It bothered me a lot whenever time I see these reviewers talk about how it should be on the Switch, which just boggles the mind. Like, it's a very stupid remark. Like, if you really think that's a con or a real criticism, like, I think you're dumb. But I do, again, like AM2R, the game has issues with the repeated Metroid boss fights. I do think this game does do the Metroid boss fights better. They're a little more dynamic, a little more involved. I don't really care for the chasing the... Well, it wouldn't fine maybe one time, but like when you replay the game, you have to re-chase like 3 or 4 Metroids across different rooms. Not as fun on repeat playthroughs. And this also has less boss fights than AM2R, but I do like the Digger boss fight. He also has a chase scene, which is kind of like a boss fight. Still a very good game. I do love the Proteus Ridley boss fight at the end. Easily the best Ridley boss fight ever. I know people complain too, like, oh, it ruins the story, quote unquote, of the game, but I don't care. It was a fun boss fight. I don't really care much for story or lore if it gets in the way of the gameplay. Gameplay is king for me. If the story suffers, if the timeline suffers, I don't care. So next on the list is Metroid Dread, developed by the same studio. I also have it in my S tier. Very, 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 very good. Easily my favorite 2D Metroid game. I love the movement. I love the combat. I like the boss fights. I like the world. The only real con for me is the music. I feel like the music is a bit bland. Because most Metroid games, even ones I don't like Metroid Prime 2, there's usually, well, actually, I don't like Hunters. There's not really memorable music there either. But for Metroid Prime 2 or the other games, it's usually memorable music for the game. Metroid Dread, not really anything memorable. A lot of it is remixes from older games, which, not that it sounds bad, but you kind of want to hear new stuff. But Dread, I think it's, 10 out of 10. Very, very, very good game. I think it's sold pretty well for a Metroid game, which I'm happy for because it's a very good game. Definitely deserves it. Uh, Not sure. The only thing with the enemy boss fights too, that was the one of the selling points because I know it was supposed to be for the DS as a sequel to Fusion all those years ago, and they couldn't get the enemies working on the DS. The enemy boss fights I think are a bit not overrated, but when you play it, when you play the game on repeated playthroughs, there's not that tension anymore. I mean, still, they're still chasing you, all that stuff, but as you replay the game, you realize you're better off just running through the rooms, which kind of defeats the purpose of it. There's supposed to be like this almost stealth sections, like the zero mission sections, where you have to sneak through the areas to avoid the enemies. Trying to use your invisibility and using the morph ball and slide, all that stuff to get through. But now you realize, just run through. If you just outrun it, you'll probably be fine. So that is a bit of a, not so much a con, like a real negative, but it does not help the repeated playthroughs. It also has Adam Malkovich again, which I know he was, because it's a sequel to Fusion, he's going to be there again. I don't really like Adam Malkovich. I think he's an idiot. But all in all, very good game. I loved it a lot. It's probably been my most replayed 2D Metroid, even though it's the most recent. I find the movement fun. I love the boss fights. I know it's not too long like most of the 2D games, but still fun to play. Easy, like these are definitely my Metroid Prime, Metroid Dread, and AM2 are definitely easily my top 3 Metroid games. Games I've probably replayed the most. I know there was that remake for Metroid Prime, or remaster or whatever, but it goes to my problem of I don't really care much for a lot of the remakes or remasters these days. Not much to remake. I know there was that trilogy edition that came out a few years after Metroid Prime 3. I never played it because I never cared for the pointer controls. I guess I'd say there was a con for me for Metroid Prime 3. I don't like the pointer controls because the way I play games is very lazy. I like to lie down on the couch. I don't want to be kind of actively pointing at the TV the whole time. I like to lie down. I sit. I'm usually sitting in very weird positions. Like I'm sitting sideways. I have my body's. I'm not sitting in a normal position where standing upright, have my hand pointed at the TV like that you see in the commercials. I'm lying down on the couch, not in a very lazy position. I'm not going to be actively. I don't like actively pointing at the screen. It interferes with my relaxation playing video games. And then we have Metroid Prime 4, which was announced I think in 2017, and there's no signs of it. I mean, maybe there'll be signs of it soon. Who knows? I'm not holding out any hope. If it comes out, it comes out. I'm not good because people have been trying to track it and speculate. I know production restarted, but I don't know. It is what it is. There's too much going on in life to really care about some game that was announced 7 years ago. It'll come out when it comes out. And that's my final list. Again, these are all, my top favorite games. Very, very good. Almost near 10s out of 10s. A's, very good. Have some problems, but still very good. B, okay. C, not that great. Kind of a lot have their problems. And D, just not really worth playing at all. These two haven't played, but I can't imagine they'd be much higher on the list if I did play them. And that's about it. This has been Craig from the Unbiased Opinion, where everyone's opinion is biased, except ours.